welcome to Heroes and Humans of Football. My name is Mehreen Khan.
And I'm Simon Cooper. This is the football show where we take the hero and we show you the human.
From Johan Cruyff to Megan Rapinoe.
And from George Best to Kylian Mbappe.
This is the Human Football Podcast. Last week's episode was on the tragic downfall of Paul Pogba, one of the most talented footballers of his generation. Find out where it all went wrong. If you haven't already, be sure to check it out. Welcome back to Heroes and Humans, where today we are discussing Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the two greatest players of his generation. This generation, my generation.
The outgoing generation, perhaps including you. This is a man who turns 40 in February, and we're going to ask, what is it about Cristiano? What goes on inside that head? How did he get so good? Why has he kept going so long? And does he have a genuine claim to goathood over Leo Messi? Could he actually be number one? And then also, has there ever been such a brilliant athlete who is so admired, yet gets laughed at and disrespected so much as Cristiano?
In this episode, we chart how Cristiano Ronaldo, the son of an alcoholic, becomes football's greatest workaholic. But is he just a robot? Perhaps the greatest mechanical footballer of all time? And is the thing that makes him great, that work ethic, also the thing that makes him seem ridiculous now that he's close to turning 40, as we said, and his powers seem to be leaving him?
Even his coordination.
This is part one of our doubleheader on Cristiano Ronaldo. In today's episode, we want to unpick the paradoxes of Cristiano and show you the human behind the hero. He's often, I think, aloof, even two-dimensional, but is a hero to millions of aspiring and current footballers. I can't think of a player that is such a pin-up for young boys all over the world, even in this generation, almost 3 generations on from when he was born.
And we're also going to talk to the political scientist and football expert Raquel Vaz Pinto for a Portuguese perspective on Ronaldo. We'll hear from Raquel later.
And a warning for some of our listeners that later on in this episode, we are going to be describing alleged sexual violence.
Now, we always start our episodes with stats, but stats are most appropriate to Ronaldo because I don't think there's another footballer who tracks his own numbers so obsessively. I mean, this is a man who doesn't speak much, and when he does, usually in banalities. But it's only when he talks about his personal ambitions that he gives us glimpses of his soul. You know, usually footballers will say, as long as the team wins, I'm happy. I don't care who scores. Ronaldo never talks like that. He says, I want to leave my mark on football history. And this quest for statistical records has motivated him since the start of his career. It's similar for Messi. Both these guys play against history more than against the other team. Probably nobody in history has had a longer career at top level than Ronaldo. I mean, this is a guy who this summer played a European Championship 20 years after his first European Championship. So he has probably notched up more records than anyone else in football history.
Let's talk about these insane numbers. So he has 132 goals for Portugal, a record in international men's football. He scored a record, incredible, 140 goals in the Champions League. The only man to score in 3 Champions League finals, and the first footballer to score more than 900 career goals at the top level. He's also won 5 Ballon d'Or awards, the trophy accolade for the world's best footballer, and that's despite coming up almost every year against Leo Messi in that title. And we're going to get on to that enduring rivalry later on in this episode and in part 2.
Because the Messi-Ronaldo rivalry is as big in Ronaldo's head as it is in ours.
Simon, tell us about where young Ronaldo grows up.
He's born in February 1985, so we're speaking just a few months before he turns 40, astonishingly for somebody still playing international football. At his birth, all the odds are stacked against him. He's born on the island of Madeira, which is lost in the Atlantic. It's nearer Africa than Europe. And if you think of Portugal, especially at that time, as a poor peripheral country, Madeira is the poor periphery of Portugal. He comes from a particularly struggling family. They live in a bungalow that's so small that they keep the washing machine on the asbestos roof, and the tropical Madeira rain gets into the house. I mean, this is extreme poverty. His mother had grown up partly in Catholic children's homes where she was beaten after her family was abandoned by her father. When she's pregnant with Ronaldo, she already has 3 small children, and she wants to abort the pregnancy. But in Portugal in 1985, there is no legal abortion. So she has the baby, When he's born, she names him Ronaldo after the US President Ronald or Ronaldo Reagan.
It's a very interesting counterfactual to think that if she just named him Ronald, in true fealty to Reagan, whether the world's best footballer could have been a guy called Ronald.
Cristiano Ronaldo, yes, just imagine that for a moment. Now, the mother is the main breadwinner. She sometimes has to go away to find work. She goes to France at one point, leaves the older siblings in charge of Ronaldo. The father, Dinis, is an alcoholic. He has fought for the dying Portuguese fascist regime before Cristiano's birth in the 1970s as a conscript in terrible colonial wars in Africa, especially in Angola, where Portugal is trying to hang on to its colonies. And these are sort of Portugal's Vietnam Wars, these hopeless, brutal battles in jungles. And Dinis returns from this. He was a conscript, he had to go. He returns from this ruined, and many other Portuguese soldiers in these wars come home and become drunkards, I suppose, as a way of dealing with their post-traumatic stress. Dinis can't even show up to Cristiano's christening on time. He turns up half an hour late, half drunk, according to Jimmy Burns' wonderful dual biography of Ronaldo and Messi. The father, as Ronaldo is growing up, is disheveled, unshaven. He's hard to reach. He spends his days in local bars, refuses all offers to treat his war trauma. And Ronaldo says, I never had a connection with him. And the father is very important because, as I see it, Ronaldo spends his life becoming not his father. Everything his father was, Ronaldo wants to be the opposite. He's going to be in control. He's going to have the perfect body. He's going to live pure, and he's going to earn money for his family.
And this is probably, I'm thinking back to our previous protagonist, the first time that we've encountered a hero with a kind of broken family, because dads are super important variables in the lives of the players that we've spoken about and even the managers. So, you're either the son of a man who is vicariously living through you, so pushing you into football, or he's also had his own football career and you're trying to live up to it. So something that we encountered with the Mourinho episode. But Ronaldo is the first example of having what we could describe as suboptimal parental conditions.
Extremely hard. And imagine also the shame in that era when alcoholism is something you can't talk about, of growing up like this. Contrast it to the most successful players of the next generation, who we've also done episodes on, Haaland, Bellingham, Mbappe. They grew up in these hyper-functional, very
Perfect
sporting families. And Messi is more like that as well. It's the Messi clan. They stay together. They build everything around the boy's career. Ronaldo has to do it himself. He always treasured the memory of the few times that his dad managed to get it together and watch him play football, often on a little field with a view over the Atlantic. And the tragedy is that he wants his father to know that he's a great footballer, but his father never seems to connect with that.
So we have this nearly aborted kid without a strong father figure. How does being a nearly aborted child affect Ronaldo growing up?
I'm very influenced in my understanding of Ronaldo by Jan Kees Butter, his Dutch biographer, who wrote a whole episode of the Dutch literary football magazine Hartgras about Ronaldo. And Butter calls his book The Unwanted Child, because Cristiano would have realized his father didn't really care about him. He wasn't aborted, but he came into the world unwanted. And so Butter says, as an unwanted child, Ronaldo acquired a constant need to prove that he had a right to exist. And in his life, he has this drive to get the admiration from the world that he never got from his dad. Hence, I think this kind of relentless need to succeed that you don't quite see with Messi. With Messi, it all comes much more easily. Ronaldo makes himself.
Because he's got daddy issues.
Yeah, I mean, one has to have enormous empathy for what he went through. Now, of course, the kid Ronaldo, you can picture it. He's a fanatical player. He can't take losing. He's better than the rest, although nobody really quite thinks of him then as a future GOAT. I mean, they see he's good, but people don't seem to have this, oh my God, feeling about him. His nickname in local kids football is Cristiano Chorao. I hope I'm pronouncing that half okay, which means Cristiano Crybaby, because even then, he already cries when they lose.
Something that he will do at the tender age of 39 as well. So how does he finally make it into club football as a young kid?
Well, I mean, Madeira is not the place you want to start if you're going to want to become a great player. But on the other hand, Portugal's football heroes have tended not to come from the Portuguese mainland. The second highest all-time scorer in the national team is Pauleta, who came from the Azores. The third highest, Eusebio, was from Mozambique. And you have Brazilians like Deco and Pep, Ronaldo's contemporary, who we call Pepe. Nani has Cape Verdean origin and so on. So often it is the periphery that produces the great players. But you have to go to the mainland to succeed. So when he's 11, he leaves Madeira alone, flies 1,000 kilometers to Sporting Lisbon's academy on the mainland. He arrives and he's a kid from Madeira with a funny accent. And Raquel Vaz Pinto talks us through how he would have been received there.
We Portuguese, we are, more or less 10 million people. We are one of the most homogeneous nation states in the world. But where you do see the differences is in the accents. And he had a very, of course, strong accent from Madeira. And that actually meant that he would be singled out. People would make fun of his accent. I'm pretty sure of that. So to me, the fact that he was able to break all those glass ceilings, that's perhaps one of the defining traits of his winning personality. The fact that he had to be separate, that he was distant from his mother, who is clearly the pillar of his life. I think that was very painful, very difficult, and I think he should get the credit for that.
So he realizes he's different, he's alone, he's more driven than the other kids. He has to overcome this terrible homesickness. Dolores, his mother, says he suffered saudades. Saudade is a key Portuguese word, almost a cliche, sadness, which is, I think, very important in Portuguese history because it's a country of emigration. Portugal being a poor country, many people crossed oceans, made new lives on other continents. And so saudade is sadness, but it's also the feeling, I think, of missing home, of homesickness. And he had that terribly as a small boy in the academy.
But as this lonely, perhaps melancholic little boy who's very, very far away from home, he's actually able to support his family now that he's a Sporting.
Yeah, it's a lot like the Messi story. So Messi at 13 goes to Barcelona, the family get a contract, so Messi becomes the breadwinner of the family in adolescence. It's the same for Cristiano, and on a lower salary, but age 12, Sporting Lisbon sign a contract with his family to pay the family 10,000 euros a year. He has become the man of the family in the traditional sense, the breadwinner.
He is a little boy, but he really feels that he's a little boy because Ronaldo has this almost prescient body consciousness about the way that he looks and how tiny he is.
Well, he's tall, but he says, I was slim and had no muscles. So when I was 11, I decided to work harder than everyone else. I stopped behaving like a child and began training to be the best in the world. So he feels he has this destiny, but this destiny can be realized because one of his superpowers is he works harder than anyone else and he works on his body. And we'll come to the theme of narcissism. He also is highly conscious of his body, his appearance, even at that age.
But it's kind of weird because in the late 90s, being a muscle-bound footballer is not necessarily the thing that's going to make you a good footballer. Having muscles is not as important as being quick or being technical or being skillful. And I think Ronaldo, now that we think about it, probably started this trend of understanding how longevity is correlated to things like muscle mass. And now it's just a normal part of how elite footballers train. They do muscle training or resistance training. Whereas he seems to have, I don't know if this is a kind of ex-post reflection on how enlightened he was, but he seems to think that this is something that will help him in football. And it's just not obvious that it would in football generally.
Well, if you look at footage of football from the 80s and 90s, the first thing that strikes you is how thin the players are, how little muscle they have. And so, nobody thinks it's important. And in fact, at Sporting, they have these conflicts with him because he's breaking into the gym. So there's one Saturday night, Sporting under-17s are playing Benfica under-17s the next morning. Ronaldo goes missing on the Saturday night from the academy. And there's a search for him. And eventually he's found in the gym. He'd managed to get hold of the keys. And they spend a lot of energy, I think, hiding the gym keys from him. And he was doing strength training by himself. Not the only time this happens. And the coach catches this little boy and says, you don't want to overstrain your body. Go to bed now. He works harder than anyone. And it's not because he believes in a cause greater than himself. He believes in his own cause. And the body is important because he's defining himself by contrast to his beloved father, whose body, as the father descends into this terrible alcoholism, will disgust Ronaldo. He doesn't want to have a sick, bedraggled body like that. He wants to have a perfect body. And it's not just the father. His elder brother, Hugo, is 10 years older, is also an addict, a drinker and a drug addict. So Ronaldo doesn't want to be like them, but also he has to heal the family through his success. And that must come through his body. And
it's about discipline. So it kind of reminds me a bit about Tuchel, about the idea of foregoing pleasures the incredible diligence that you need to be able to preserve, the very, very low percentage of body fat that he constantly seems to have. So I think we'll come on to this when we talk about his look. The thing about Ronaldo that's so striking is how consistent he has looked over more than 20 years. He still looks physically like the same guy.
He always takes the hard route. At 17, he breaks into the first team squad at Sporting. The coach had wanted to bring him in at 16, but the doctors advised against. And he's going all out in a training session, and an older player says, "Hey, little kid, take it easy." And Ronaldo says, "You won't say that to me when I'm the best player in the world," which is a very bizarre thing for a 17-year-old who's barely played a minute of professional football to say. But always he's aiming higher than anyone else can possibly conceptualize. And on his league debut, he's 17 years and 8 months. He scores twice in a game. He proves that, yes, there is a potential here to be the greatest. Suddenly everyone else can see it too, but he could already see it. He becomes, in that match, Sporting's youngest ever scorer. And his mother, of course, is watching in the stands. She's so overcome, she faints and breaks her front teeth as she falls, writes Jimmy Burns.
But this particular generation of Sporting Lisbon kids is pretty talented. They had players that became world-known figures, and Ronaldo was just one of many. So it was not clear that he was the best in this crop.
No, there are people at the beginning who think the real star at Sporting is this other kid winger, Ricardo Quaresma. He's going to be better than Ronaldo, some people thought. And Miguel Lourenço Pereira, a Portuguese writer, he writes, the young Ronaldo was a bit of a skinny-legged ballet dancer who would also fall over quite easily. All the kind of English cliches of Latin footballers were very true of the kid Ronaldo.
But if you knew football, like certain Jose Mourinho, you knew that Ronaldo was going to be the one. He spotted him too.
Yeah, so summer 2003, Ronaldo was 18. He's played half a season or so for Sporting. And Mourinho, who's then coach of Porto, says, the first time I saw him, I thought, that's Van Basten's son, referring, of course, to the great Dutch striker Marco van Basten. Because Ronaldo, at this point, he's sometimes a striker, sometimes a winger. So summer 2003, big clubs have already spotted him. And here's, I think, the best counterfactual in the Ronaldo story. Barcelona try to sign him. Jorge Mendes, his agent, that summer, offers Barcelona Cristiano plus Nani as a package. Barcelona are excited, but they've just spent all their money on Ronaldinho, so they're looking for more money. Ferran Soriano, who's now the chief executive of Manchester City, at the time was CEO of Barca, admitted later, we thought 18 million was too high a price for Ronaldo. But the counterfactual here is if they do sign him summer 2003,
Wow.
A few months later, Leo Messi enters the first team squad. Then you would have Messi and Ronaldo playing in harness for their careers maybe, and then you could just abolish European football. There would be no point in continuing.
But the other team, and we spoke about this in our Arsene Wenger episode, that pretty much think they've got the signature in the bag is actually Arsenal.
Yeah, so Wenger, of course, knows everyone in football. He knows Cristiano probably before he was born, and he flies the unknown teenager Cristiano Ronaldo to London just before the other big clubs get wind of him. Ronaldo and his mum come to London. They're shown around the Highbury Stadium. Wenger gives him an Arsenal shirt with the number 9 and his name on his back. And Ronaldo says, yeah, I'll sign for Arsenal. But then, of course, that summer 2003, there is a momentous friendly match between Sporting Lisbon and
Manchester United. Is this the most important friendly that's ever happened?
I think quite possibly, yes. But anyway, in 2003, the United defence, these are gnarled veterans, top of European football. They're playing against this spotty 18-year-old kid with blonde highlights in his hair and coloured boots. Obviously a kid who fancies himself, but, they're going to kick him out of the game. That's what you do. He humiliates them. And Ronaldo's marker, John O'Shea, is substituted at half-time. He's so dizzy he can hardly stand. After the game in the changing room, the United players speak with one voice, and on the plane back home, they say to Alex Ferguson, you have to sign Ronaldo. Now, Ferguson says, don't worry, lads, I've got this, because United were aware of Ronaldo already, but they'd planned to sign him a few months later or a year later. And Sporting later said they'd agreed to sell him to Arsenal, but after the United match, United act very quickly, and within days, the kid is in Manchester. Now, Wenger never gets over losing Ronaldo. And Wenger once said to a friend of mine, next time you see Ronaldo, you ask him, he still has that Arsenal shirt. Wenger's sure of that. But United get him. And it's the first time they've ever signed a Portuguese player, because these are not the days when Latins are going to Manchester in large numbers. It was also a very brave move for Ronaldo to make. He doesn't speak English. He's going to this very foreign country. It would have been much easier to go to Spain. So it's a sign of his daring and his ambition. At United, he is given the godly shirt, the number 7, previously worn by...
Well, David Beckham is the first one that springs to mind.
He had just left that summer, so the 7 shirt was free. Eric Cantona and George Best.
Who is the current number 7 of Manchester United, Simon?
I do not know.
Think.
Mason Mount.
Yes, it is Mason Mount.
Oh my God.
When he got the shirt, he was pretty gassed. It hasn't quite worked out. But that's not the shirt that Ronaldo saw for himself, despite being super ambitious, telling everyone that he's going to be the greatest player in the world. Even the number 7 at the beginning feels quite heavy for him.
Yeah, he'd asked for number 28. And Ferguson said, no, you're going to have number 7, because Ferguson can already see this kid is good enough to wear the number 7.
And that's where the immortal CR7 is born.
Now, there's a press conference where Manchester United present this unknown teenager to the British media. And Ronaldo can barely speak English at that point. But he says in, his broken English, I want to be the best. And the journalists in the room, they don't really understand. Does he mean he wants to be George Best, who's the winger that everyone in England is comparing him to? And Cristiano corrects them. He says, no, I want to be the best, not George Best. Now, this is a crazy thing for an 18-year-old who's, barely played professional football to say. But that has always been his goal from the start. United get a pretty good deal because they just sold David Beckham to Madrid for 23 million quid. And Ronaldo, they're very happy to have him, but he's not really their highest rated youngster at this point, because a year later, they sign another 18-year-old, Wayne Rooney, and they pay 31 million quid for Rooney. They'd only paid 12 million for Ronaldo. So, Ronaldo is seen as talented, but definitely he's the only person going around saying he could be the best in the world.
And I remember when Ronaldo arrives, it's also part of this growing excitement about young, exotic teenagers that English clubs are finding all over the world, often Brazil, or in this case, in Portugal.
Usually they don't come off.
They often don't come off, but Manchester United fans couldn't have imagined how good it will get with Ronaldo.
He moves into this ugly £4 million mansion in Alderley Edge, suburb of Manchester. He gets a personal chef, which is now, of course, totally normal. Every footballer has a personal chef, but at the time, it's weird. He has a field constructed beside the house, so he can practice there too. And he spends most of his day at the club. He stays on after practice even more religiously than David Beckham did. But at this stage, he still seems a brilliantly talented, lightweight kid who isn't ready for the big time. Can't speak English, and he has this very bad habit, which doesn't go down well with the other United players, that whenever he's fouled or tackled in training, he lets out this baby shriek, ah, and then collapses to the ground. You can imagine United players don't really put up with this, so that ends pretty quickly.
Fergie calls him a wee show-off.
Ferguson was not a manager who liked to talk about individuals, especially not immature, slightly narcissistic, young individuals. But with Ronaldo, he makes an exception. So Ronaldo comes on for 30 minutes on his debut against Bolton at Old Trafford. And it's like Patrick Vieira's debut a few years earlier against Sheffield Wednesday. Everyone immediately sees it. My God, there is no doubt. And Ferguson says after that game, he is going to be the best player in the world.
Wow.
I'm saying that about an 18-year-old after his debut. And United players see it too. So soon after Ronaldo gets into the team, they start to sing, and they're referring to the great Brazilian centre-forward Ronaldo. They start singing, there's more than one Ronaldo. And pretty soon, that song becomes, there's only one Ronaldo. So they are, again, setting the bar very high.
And at the beginning, it's a really tough thing for him to carry, because you're now in a world where every single step over that goes wrong, every dive is now hyper-fixated on, because the great Fergie has said, you're going to be one of the world's best. So I think at the beginning, it probably does him not too many favours. And also in the training ground, or at least with some of his colleagues, it doesn't go too well with some vets.
Well, there's two hierarchies in a football team. One is hierarchy of quality, and the other is hierarchy of age and experience.
Age and status, yeah.
So he's near the top of the quality. He is at the top of the quality hierarchy, but he's at the bottom of the age and status hierarchy. So that makes it difficult for him. And so he particularly has conflicts with Van Nistelrooy, who at that point is United's best goal scorer since Dennis Law. But Van Nistelrooy is very annoyed by this vain, egocentric crybaby. And once in training, he reduces Cristiano to tears. Another time he tackles Cristiano hard, and Cristiano does the dying swan act. And Van Nistelrooy shouts at him, "Go and cry in your daddy's arms."
Ouch.
And that's a big ouch, because this is just after Diniz, his dad, had finally drunk himself to death, which had always been his destiny. And Cristiano had been told the news in the Portuguese camp. He was away with the national team. And the coach, Filipe Scolari, and the captain, Luis Figo, came to his room to break the terrible news. And Ronaldo, I think, feels this as a personal failure that his dad died, because he'd done everything. His mission had become to save his dad. So when he gets this massive salary at United, he buys his family a house in Madeira where his dad and Cristiano's addicted older brother, Hugo, could live in comfort. So he thinks, with my success, I can cure my family. And it hadn't worked. And so, when Van Nistelrooy says, "Go and cry in your daddy's arms," Ronaldo punches him in the face, which is not something I would do with someone as big as Van Nistelrooy. And soon afterwards, Ferguson sells his brilliant striker Van Nistelrooy. He'd also sold Nicky Butt after Butt had fallen out with Ronaldo. I mean, selling Nicky Butt is maybe a bit less of a sticking your neck out step. But Ferguson has really bet the club on this teenage kid.
So I think we've got a situation now where Ronaldo is almost confounding what people expect of him. So people think that he's a pretty boy prima donna, but actually he's the hardest working player at Manchester United. Ruud van Nistelrooy probably thinks that he's some sort of coddled daddy's boy. That's clearly far from the truth.
Yes.
So at the beginning, he is really breaking a lot of, I think, the unfair stereotypes that were put on him because of the way that he looked.
So how does this spotty, skinny teenager with a terrible haircut and a bad diving habit make it to greatness?
Find out after the break.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write a million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
This is a reminder that you're listening to Heroes and Humans of Football with me, Simon Cooper.
And me, Mehreen Khan. Welcome back to Heroes and Humans. You're joining us in 2004, where a very spotty, still teenage Ronaldo is making his first big outing with the Portuguese national team at the Euro 2004 final, where you were in Lisbon, of all places.
Yes, they're playing Greece at home in the final. It's very bizarre.
Even in 2004.
Yeah, obviously Portugal are going to win. They're playing at home. This is going to be their first trophy as a national team. The whole country expects. They have Ronaldo on one wing, Luis Figo on another. They have a wonderful team, but Greece win 1-0. Ronaldo weeps on the field. We now know that Ronaldo always weeps on the field. But at the time, it moves the Portuguese deeply. He is reflecting the pain of the nation. And I think this is the first time he really imprints himself on the Portuguese psyche. The man who will become the most significant Portuguese of his generation, way beyond football.
And he's introduced to the country, really, as this devastated teenager in probably the most unexpected giant killing in the Euros ever, probably since Denmark win it, more than a decade earlier.
And Portugal, the frustration of this wonderful football culture that has never won a prize, that continues. Portuguese football seems cursed. Now, Ronaldo, like Messi, takes years to become the great player that we get to know. He's not like Mbappe or Haaland, who arrive in football more or less the finished article. Ronaldo and Messi are clearly geniuses, but they also are not performing as greats at the beginning. But the thing about Ronaldo is that he learns quicker than anyone else. So United have this Dutch assistant coach, René Meulensteen, and he sits down with Ronaldo when Ronaldo is 20, and he asks Ronaldo to grade aspects of his play out of 10, like technique and strength, goal scoring, defending. And Ronaldo is very honest about the things he's not good at. He doesn't give himself a 10 for anything. And he marks himself down quite low in certain categories. And Molin's saying, look, this is amazing. Here's a kid who's barely 20 and he can already analyze himself. He's intelligent enough to analyze his game. And he and Molinstein also know he has this trick, the step over.
Yeah.
And it's not at this point very effective. The joke about Ronaldo at the time is he'll do 7 step overs and the defender opposite him will be just standing there waiting like, when are you going to do something, kid? He needs to be productive. He can't head at this point, he can't tackle, he can't take free kicks, and he has only one or two feints. Molenstein takes him in hand, they practice in the gym, and he's good enough to learn new feints, which is very hard to do. Usually you don't really learn much football technique beyond the age of 13.
It should be instinctive by that point, right? He's already
Yeah,
20.
it should be ingrained. I think it's like piano playing. You are the player you are, and then you just get more intelligent in how you use it. But Ronaldo actually, through daily repetition, can memorize a repertoire of feints that he makes his own and can do almost spontaneously on the field. And so now, very quickly, he has enough variation in what he does to surprise opponents, and he becomes very quickly more goal-oriented.
But you think, Simon, that even though he's such a hard worker and he's developing this incredible reputation and Fergie's sort of put him on this pedestal, you don't think that he elicits real love or affection from United fans, but it's always just this kind of admiration for his ability to put so much effort into his career?
Well, I think that will become the norm for Ronaldo throughout his career, but we see it first at United, that there is a distance. I mean, he also has this terrible episode with English fans generally when at the World Cup 2006, Wayne Rooney has stamped on Ricardo Carvalho's testicles and deservedly gets sent off. But the English tabloids especially feed this idea that Ronaldo really got him sent off by talking to the referee and then winking to camera when Rooney is sent off, that it's really all Ronaldo's fault.
He
which
actually
is ludicrous.
winks to his bench, but he gets picked up on the cameras.
Sorry. Yeah. It feels like he's winking at us, the viewer.
It feels like he's just rubbing in salt into the wounds.
And in fact, that summer, he takes such abuse in the tabloids and from some English fans that Ronaldo feels he needs to leave England. He can't stay in this country where he's hated. But it's Rooney who saves him. Rooney calls him up and says, look, no hard feelings, all's fair in love and war. Ferguson helps. And so Ronaldo manages to stay at United.
When he's becoming much better and he's stopped being a step-over merchant, he does elicit a lot of, what do we call it, stick from rival fans. He's the player that is playing at Manchester United that all the rival fans love to throw abuse at, to call him a show pony, to laugh at his stupid tricks and to berate him when he's falling over. But I think already at that point, because he's becoming such a subject for abuse from opposition fans, United fans learn that they do need to protect him. So I think there's a reason that episode with Rooney in the Euros and the wing doesn't get too far. And that's because United fans also see him as one of their own. So I don't think that he's unloved. I think they have a different kind of relationship with him, which obviously then changes when they realise that they've birthed a goat, as it were. And there's a sense of pride that United fans will always have about the fact that they had the mini baby goat.
Sure,
Cristiano.
pride and defending him against opposition fans. But what fans of Ronaldo's clubs always realise is that Cristiano's career is about Cristiano. He's not a Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, Ryan Giggs figure who seems to identify with the club. Ronaldo always takes it for granted that he's bigger than whichever club is lucky enough to employ him. So he always maintains a distance, an emotional distance from the club, and fans always sense it. The game is just the setting for his own personal drama.
I think at the time, there is probably this distance. Now looking back, the fact that United have wingers like Anthony, who, as far as I can see, even if he spent 100 hours on the training pitch a week trying to learn different skills, clearly cannot do it. The idea that he is able to perform on such a level to ultimately bring success to your team, which he does, means that it doesn't matter that he was doing it for himself because he did it wearing your shirt and you feel privileged that he wore your shirt.
Sure. But it's I wouldn't call it a relationship of love. He's also not able to conceal his distance from his club. He's not able to pretend to love. And there's this vignette that for me captures it. It's January 2008, and United are preparing to mark the 50th anniversary of the terrible air crash in Munich in February 1958 that had wiped out half the team. The 50th anniversary is a very big deal. United that day have invited journalists to interview a few of the survivors of the crash. One survivor within minutes is in tears. Wayne Rooney is interviewed as, representative of the current United team to give a tribute to the dead. And there's only one man who shows he doesn't care. So Ronaldo has to make a media appearance around this too. but he has better things to do. He's dressed as always as if he's going to do a photo shoot in a girls' magazine, and he's furious at United on making him hanging around, that he has to wait until Rooney has finished giving this to Ronaldo boring interview about the Munich air crash before Ronaldo can do his thing and then leave. And he throws a tantrum. He's being made to wait. And he taps on the glass in the room to hurry Rooney along with this interview. He whistles to Rooney because Ronaldo thinks, I don't care about Munich. I care about my day and I'm losing minutes here. And I just don't think that any other player would not at least be able to pretend to some kind of identification with the club. Ronaldo thinks, I'm bigger than this.
At this point, we can probably put it down to stupid naivety from a young man who doesn't really understand the historical weight of the Munich air crash. And maybe he can kind of be forgiven for that. But I think posterity has actually been much kinder to Ronaldo. I can't remember a season where United fans still don't sing Viva Ronaldo, even though he's long gone and has been long gone for a while, despite that cameo return. So I think what we see with Ronaldo and fans is modern love. This kind of idea of affection, which means that you don't actually require loyalty and you almost expect promiscuity from the figures that you love. And I think that's actually become a norm in football over the last 10 years, where fandom or being a football fan often can mean being attached to individuals more than it does being a club, which is why Messi, Ronaldo is such a perennial debate. Because when you ask that to people, you're not just asking United fans or Barcelona fans, you're asking something else about what it shows about you as a character. It's something that divides you, like a black and white thing. It's a binary thing. So I think now that we're in a world where football fans are very much attached to individuals and they'll follow them wherever they go rather than being tribal club fans, I think Ronaldo is one of the people who sort of starts that as a trend.
Yeah, and so just as in music you have Swifties, in football you have Ronaldo fans.
Yes. I guess the best testament to this is looking at his social media. We're speaking at a time where Ronaldo's just joined YouTube and he's already got 50 million subscribers, which he got in the first 7 days of his channel. That subscribers, to put it into context, is more than the official YouTube accounts of Barcelona, Real Madrid and Manchester United put together.
It's even more than Heroes and Humans have on YouTube.
It is. Of course, please subscribe to Heroes and Humans. But the scale of this thing that he gets from people, whether it's love or hate, is just, it's so difficult to put into a normal context because he's just larger than football. And I guess at this point, you mentioned Taylor Swift. He's got to be up there as probably the two most well-known people in the world right now.
And I think it's in 2008, when he's 23, that he arrives at that level, that he achieves greatness.
In 2008, which sadly for me as a Chelsea fan is one of the worst moments of my life.
We're going to come to that in a moment. But sadly for Ronaldo, this achieving of greatness in 2008 is exactly when another kid, Leo Messi, achieves greatness. They both break through to that level more or less in the same year. And so that rivalry will deprive Ronaldo. In any other era, Ronaldo would have been the greatest player of his era.
Totally unchallenged.
Both of them have gone from being wingers at the beginning, that's where you put the little kid who can play, to becoming false nines, as it were. They're popping up in the centre of attack. They don't start in at centre forward, but that's where they end. With Messi, he comes from the wing. Ronaldo also sprints into the empty number 9 position. United at this time have begun playing without a number 9, so Ronaldo can enter that position. And he's acquired this new weapon. He's a brilliant header of the ball now, and he can hang in the air when he jumps. And you see that unveiled, as you just alluded to, in the 2008 Champions League final in Moscow, United-Chelsea, where United have worked out that he's going to be playing against Michael Essien, brilliant player, not a great header of the ball. So they ping one up to Ronaldo, and he beautifully heads it in.
Well, he does this thing where he can hang in the air. And it's just like watching something completely not human. He obviously has incredible neck muscles.
He jumps higher than the average NBA player, I've read.
And he sticks there. And he can do it almost like, without gravity. Yeah, it's incredible to see it happen. So Ronaldo scoring a headed goal. I mean, I think that's the headed goal where people realize that he has some superhuman qualities. He will obviously go on to miss a penalty.
But it doesn't matter because so does John Terry. And at 2 a.m. in Moscow, when we're all wanting to get home, there is Ronaldo lying in the centre circle, face down in tears, just like 4 years ago in Lisbon. But now tears of happiness, because Ronaldo only has one way of signalling any emotion.
But he knows now that this winning a Champions League with Manchester United, the first they've done since 1999, he knows that this is going to propel him onto a different level. And he has become very talismanic in that side as well.
And he knows it will bring him the personal awards that he cares deeply about. So he wins both the Football Writers and the Players Awards for English Footballer of the Year. And at both award ceremonies, he makes the same speech. Obviously, the agency have only written him one speech. He doesn't care. He delivers it twice. And then there's the Ballon d'Or, the Golden Ball for Footballer of the Year, which for Ronaldo is as big an obsession, I think, as winning Champions Leagues. He really cares about this. And at the time, there's this rule that the Ballon d'Or can only be won by Portuguese-speaking people called Ronaldo. So you have Ronaldo Fenomeno, the Brazilian, you have Ronaldinho, which means little Ronaldo, and you have Cristiano Ronaldo.
Ronaldo Reagan.
Yeah, weirdly, 2007, the prize is won by Kaká, who is a Portuguese speaker, but his real name is Ricardo. So that was an error.
Bend the rules that year.
But the other Ronaldos only last a couple of years at the top, and Cristiano plans to stay there forever. So when he wins the Ballon d'Or in 2008, it's just his first one. He knows it's just the first. He's already counting. His agent, Jorge Mendes, hosts this sumptuous buffet, because apparently when you win the prize, you have to buy the food for everyone. In a very nice indicator of the different styles of the Messi and Ronaldo clans, when Messi wins the Ballon d'Or the next year, Messi's first in 2009, the Messi family buys supermarket pizzas for everyone.
Yeah, but I don't think Ronaldo's had a pizza since he was about 3 years old. So
No.
it was a very select buffet. I'm sure he got his private chef involved.
He has built the body for greatness by this time. The guy can do 142 sit-ups in 45 seconds, which is actually...
What? That's not even... How?
Well, it's very close to my record. And he's encased this kind of slim sprinter's body in muscle.
He's just incredibly lean, isn't he? He's very, very lean.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you have the sprinter type with these long, loose hamstrings, and that's Cristiano. But those people, Michael Owen is an example, are very susceptible to injury because your hamstrings go. Ronaldo solved this problem by encasing himself in muscle, so he's uninjurable almost. Even on holiday, he exercises constantly. He'll play in a European away match in somewhere like Moscow in those days, get home at 4 a.m, and he will have an ice bath, which is his great trademark thing. Apparently it's not a very useful medical thing. Don't start doing them yourself. But he believes in them.
No, it's very, very good for you. And also they stop your muscle development, which is what he wants. He doesn't want to be bulky. He wants to be what he is, which is to have very, very high lean body mass. So it works. And now obviously cold plunging is the most trendiest thing you could do if somebody you care about your body. But Ronaldo was like, he was first to all this stuff, man. It's kind of impressive.
And he's very proud of his body. So I remember there's this moment in late 2008. I mean, this is a kid who's teased at United for looking in the mirror all the time before matches. You know, he monopolizes the changing room mirror. Wayne Rooney used to tease him that he was ugly, knowing that would always get a rise out of Ronaldo.
Rooney called someone else ugly?
I teased him. Yeah. Rooney was, I think, very aware that he himself was not, that there was a Beauty and the Beast aspect of the two of them. And Ronaldo had always had this beauty. He had this impossibly narrow waist, this straight back, and the sulky looks. Like he looks like he's in a 1980s boy band. The hair gel, and then underneath it all, the ultra marathoner's heart. Even his heartbeat barely rises during a match. But now he has this muscle to show off. And there's this moment, I think they're playing Villarreal, it's late 2008. And he takes off his training top and he lifts his shirt to give the camera a good look at his stomach muscles.
Yeah, it's one of his celebrations. He'll do it at Madrid. He'll just show the abs.
It starts then. He looks like a socialist realist statue. And from the kid who used to go down whenever he was touched, it's now the opposite. When the defender sees Ronaldo opposite him, it's terrifying. Not just that he's really good, but he looks like Robocop. This is a particular issue with Ronaldo because he's very aware of his own look. I mean, if you contrast it with Messi is neither a visual person nor a verbal person. Doesn't really try to display himself in either way. Ronaldo is not a verbal person, but he's a hyper-visual person. He's extremely aware of how he looks. So what do you, as an expert, make of his look?
So I think he's been on some kind of voyage of discovery. Because when he does arrive in the Premier League as a pimply, skinny kid with a really bad haircut, he's changed. So he gets his teeth done. He fixes his skin. He actually stops having silly haircuts. So if we think about, iconic visual footballers, fashion icons, I'm thinking about Beckham, right? Beckham will change his haircut every 18 months. And when he does, millions of boys will go and get the haircut. Ronaldo's actually remarkably just kept the same slick-backed, short-cut, sort of gelled hair. So the thing that strikes me about his look is actually the consistency. The fact that his body, his haircut, his style, his fashion has almost shown no signs of changing or progressing once he gets to this point around the 2008, once he hits his kind of maturation.
Yeah.
He looks remarkably consistent. His visual aesthetic design language around Ronaldo is the same at every club. The six-pack, the tan, the incredibly lean body weight, the muscle mass, the same hair, nothing changes. He still dresses like he's in 2009. He has this slightly cloying like sense of like tight skinny jeans and terrible designer clothes. So he's not a fashion icon. He's not even visually particularly interesting. He's just always the same. And this is like kind of like when you hear tech bros who wear exactly the same clothes every single day because they want to limit the number of choices or decisions that they have to make. So they just wear black t-shirts, black jeans and sneakers. Ronaldo's kind of like that.
But he cares deeply every day about how he looks.
Yeah.
And I know that narcissism is one of the overused words of our time. And it's a kind of casual slur that people often apply to Ronaldo. But I was impressed by his Dutch biographer, Jan Kees Buurten, who takes the idea of narcissism seriously. He asks, is Ronaldo clinically a narcissist? And these are very difficult things to ask about someone you've never spoken to. Buurten hasn't spoken to him. But Buurten says, look, he's an unwanted child whose life is an attempt to prove that he deserves to live. So his achievements prove he's worthy of living. And the psychologist says to Buurten, exactly, that's the core of narcissism, proving that you deserve to live. And the characteristics of a narcissist clinically are extremely self-involved, difficulty in empathizing with others, and always needing applause, always needing admiration. And all that describes Ronaldo. I mean, in that
describes
sense,
a lot of people. I would say most of the men that I know in my life that category falls into. And also, again,
Harsh.
like I know that maybe in footballer terms he stands out, but now we're judging Ronaldo's life. I'm judging him in terms of hyper celebrity. And again, in that world where there are so many people that really have hugely narcissistic traits, but almost have no discernible talent and haven't actually achieved anything, I'm kind of willing to allow Ronaldo to be a narc.
He has a lot to love himself for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And loads of other people do it too. And that probably also does affect the wiring of your own brain and how you see yourself in the mirror every day. The fact that you are the subject of people's insane adoration. There are still little boys that break through security barriers at every single training ground to try and get close to this guy. Still in 2024 that happens. He has a demigod-like status.
Now, Alex Ferguson has witnessed Ronaldo's development from this teenage crybaby who arrives in 2003 to becoming the world's best player in 2008. And Ferguson has tried to monitor and control this relationship. And we've said in the Ferguson episode how his favorite word is control. And Ferguson, from the start, has tried to create a father-son relationship with Ronaldo. That's Ferguson's usual modus operandi. But it seems especially fruitful with this fatherless and childlike Portuguese kid who's very far from home. And Ronaldo's own father, shortly before dying, maybe realizing his own failure as a father, had pointed to Ferguson as his own successor. And Ronaldo's dad had said, my son has a second father in Manchester. So that's been the Ferguson-Ronaldo relationship in this time. And Ferguson infantilizes him when he talks about him, like he's speaking about a 7-year-old. And so every year, Real Madrid start coming for Ronaldo from 2005. And Ferguson behaves like the father who has to make the decision for his son about what's best for him. And in 2008, when Real Madrid have come again, Ferguson says, young lads can be twisted by the talk of money, but if you saw him after the Champions League final, he was the happiest boy in the world.
My wee boy.
Wee boy, and I'm his daddy, and I know what he needs. And Ferguson said, I genuinely believe that I know the best club in the world is for him, and that's Manchester United. When you have young players, you want the best for him. So Ferguson is still trying to keep the world's best player, or one of the world's two best players, infantilized. And Ronaldo mostly responds. So even in 2008, which is the last unsuccessful flirtation with Madrid, and Ronaldo had said, I'm open to going there. When he confirms he'll be staying at United that summer, he says in a statement that was obviously written for him, I was responsible for all this controversy. I was the one who publicly expressed my desire to go to Real Madrid. I ended up being, even involuntarily, responsible for the poor relationship between the two clubs. So he's saying, sorry, daddy. So at this point, he and Ferguson are both living as a father-son. So Ferguson has this project to keep Ronaldo at Old Trafford for as long as possible, because everybody understands the boy's destiny is to go to Real Madrid. That's what Ronaldo wants. Dolores, the mother, has said in an interview that she wants him to go to Madrid. That's her dream. Ferguson knows it's going to happen, but it's going to happen for big money, and it's not going to happen quite yet. And so Ferguson has this surrogate, the United keeper, Edwin van der Sar, who, as the kind of elder statesman of the team, is sent to sit next to Ronaldo at meals and in the sauna and explain to him why he needs to stay at United a bit longer. But the end comes in 2009. The Champions League final, United are really massacred by Barcelona, who are much better. Messi scores this fantastic headed goal. It's the moment when Messi becomes the world's best player, replacing Ronaldo. And Ronaldo feels United are the second best team in the world, and that's not good enough for me. We're much worse than Barcelona, and Madrid have more potential than United, he feels. And, I was at that final and everyone's talking, is this the time Ronaldo really leaves? And there's this very telling moment when Ronaldo, he's doing these selfish dribbles because he doesn't really trust his teammates to play on his level. And he dribbles up another blind alley, loses the ball, and Ferguson gets up off the bench. And normally Ferguson would have berated the guy who'd done this selfish thing. Ferguson looks at him and then he just sits down thinking, I'm not going to waste any words. He's leaving. It's over. And that's the moment when 2009, it's really going to happen. And it does. He signs for Real Madrid, who buy him essentially as the antidote to Messi. And over the next decade, those two guys will develop the highest level individual rivalry in football history.
That summer, when he's about to move to Real Madrid, he's the most spoken about footballer in the world. Ronaldo goes on an ill-fated and maybe uncharacteristically hedonistic holiday to Las Vegas. And just a warning for our listeners that this is the part of the episode where we are going to be describing some alleged sexual violence. It's the summer of 2009, season is over, and Ronaldo is in the Sin City, Las Vegas. Simon, talk us through the story.
Ronaldo is in Las Vegas with his brother-in-law and a cousin. They're staying in a penthouse at the Palms Place Hotel. And the night of June 12th, 2009, they go to a nightclub called Mehreen. And he meets a local woman who's a model called Catherine Mayorga. And we're naming her because she has waived her right to anonymity. She is okay with her name being discussed in this context. And so he's there with this beautiful woman. Paparazzi photograph them together. And there's instant speculation on the net worldwide that this woman, unknown, is his new girlfriend. Cristiano says there's going to be a party at my suite. She goes back there. And then she says afterwards, Catherine Mayorga says afterwards, that Ronaldo raped her in the bedroom. Ronaldo has always vehemently denied this. Mayorga went to the police the next day to file a complaint, but didn't give the alleged culprit's name because she said, him being a famous celebrity, she was scared of the publicity. And instead, she started civil proceedings against him. Now, this is where it gets very sensitive. Obviously, Ronaldo's lawyers spring into action and they ask him what happened and write up his accounts. And they get him to fill in multiple questionnaires about what he says happened that night. But then later, the Football League's website hacked his lawyers or his agency and gave the documents to Spiegel magazine, the very respected German magazine Der Spiegel. And Der Spiegel wrote what it found in these documents that had been obtained from Ronaldo's lawyers. And Spiegel says a list of hundreds of questions was submitted to Ronaldo, his brother-in-law, and his cousin. And so there's several versions of the questionnaire, always with more or less the same questions, but the answers change. And in one version of the questionnaire from December 2009, Ronaldo describes consensual sex between them. But there's another much earlier version sent via email in September 2009 by a lawyer working on Ronaldo's behalf to other lawyers. And in this version of the questionnaire, Ronaldo, who in the document is called X, is asked whether the woman ever raised her voice, screamed, or called out. And according to the document, X, i.e. Ronaldo, replied, she said no and stop several times. She said she didn't want to, but she made herself available. And X, or Ronaldo, says, but she kept saying, no, don't do it. I'm not like the others. And he said, I apologized afterwards. Now, this is a description of something that doesn't sound like consensual sex. There's another question. Did Miss C say anything afterwards about the sex being too brutal? And X replies, she didn't complain about it being brutal. She complained that I forced her. Now, Ronaldo's lawyers said the document concerned was completely fabricated. They and Ronaldo have always denied that there was a rape. His lawyers paid a private detective to follow Catherine Mayorga afterwards, and the detective would, for example, clock how many glasses of wine she drank, I think in an attempt to paint her as a bad girl and an unreliable source. So the first time around, the case ends with a legal deal to pay her hush money not to talk about it. And she wasn't even allowed to mention his name to her therapist or her family. And Mayorga says that when speaking to the therapist, she always had to censor herself about what to say because of the contract she'd signed. And she says that the rape, as she says it was a rape, he denies that, she says it destroyed her for years. So she signed this contract not to talk about it. But then in 2017, the Me Too movement starts, and many women start describing sexual violence that they have suffered. And so she decides to go public and takes up the case again. She gets a new lawyer who said that the initial silent settlement she signed was void, mostly because she was so psychologically wounded when she made it. The police in Las Vegas reinvestigated the alleged rape in 2018, but they concluded that the claims couldn't be proved beyond reasonable doubt. She files a civil case. The judge in Nevada dismisses it, mostly because her lawyers had used purloined confidential documents. And so Ronaldo wins. She is defeated in court. She cannot even pursue a civil case, and there is not enough evidence to support any criminal case.
But this is actually not the first time the allegations about Ronaldo and his relationships with women are under question. There's something else a bit earlier in his career when he's still at Manchester United in 2005, which also comes to the surface.
Yes. So in 2005 in London, he and another man are accused by two women of assaulting them after a United game against Fulham in the Sanderson Hotel. And Ronaldo told friends he had been stitched up. It's reported that one of the women who made the accusation later withdrew her allegation, and the UK's Crown Prosecution Service ruled there wasn't enough evidence to even try to prosecute the case. So it's very important to emphasize Ronaldo has never been found guilty of rape in either case. And in fact, there has never been enough evidence to assemble a criminal case against him.
Yes. But I think in particular, the Las Vegas case is something that will play on him. It doesn't obviously have any ramifications for him on the pitch, but as we'll talk about in episode 2, I think it does change the way that he thinks about how he needs to create a perfect family setup, how he doesn't want to be embroiled in these types of scandals, especially as a boy who came from something that you could describe as a bit of a broken home. So we'll talk about in episode 2 about his relationship with Georgina, his now partner and wife, and how I think he's tried to really hard to construct this perfect family with this perfect woman, and how he shows her off to the rest of the world.
He's also by now become a perfect footballer, and in part 2, we'll also be talking about the greatest individual rivalry in football history between peak Ronaldo and peak Messi. And we'll describe how he finally wins Portugal the first prize in their history, where in the final at Euro 2016, he appears in the role of coach, leading them from the touchline after going off injured.
Tune in to episode 2, where we'll also be discussing what kind of father the son of an alcoholic becomes to his own children, including his mini-me, Cristiano Jr. And I'll also speculate that now that he's a resident of Saudi Arabia, the holy land of Islam, is Cristiano going to get a new fan in me by converting to Islam?
Tune in next week for episode 2 of our Cristiano Ronaldo series. Thank you for listening to Heroes and Humans of Football. For more information, go to our website at heroesandhumans.com.
And follow us at Heroes and Humans on all social platforms.
Next week's episode is the second in our 2-part series on Cristiano Ronaldo, in which he goes from greatness to getting old. How does he handle it? Be sure to check it out.
This show was developed by Immaterial and produced by One Fine Play. Matt Cheney is the series producer. Kazra Firuzia is the editor and producer. We have been your hosts, Mehreen Khan
and Simon Cooper.
And this has been Heroes and Humans of Football.